people want to portray this as some sort of martyr thing. Maybe. I doubt it, but
Yeah,
whatever.
she was incompetent.
There's
no question.
And
she
hasn't spoken out either, and she saw all this stuff. So they're all vitamin supplement scammers.
The martyr? Yeah.
Organized money.
Trump just pardoned Ticketmaster because there's a voter somewhere in this country that he hasn't yet alienated.
Yeah,
so
there's a hip hop fan in Washington State who was
still
on board.
Still likes him.
He still liked him.
He just had to find that guy.
He's like, man, my dreams have been shattered.
Yeah.
No, it's a fascinating story because I think that when Gail Slater was let go, told to resign or she would be fired, that was it for antitrust at the federal level in America. And there was this trial coming up on March 2nd between the U.S. DOJ and 40 states and Live Nation Ticketmaster, which was a monopolization trial that Jonathan Cantor brought when he was head of DOJ antitrust back in 2024. And it was sitting out there, even though they had decapitated the head of the antitrust division. And the question was, are they going to go through with it? And they did go through with it for a week. The trial lasted 1 week. And then on Monday, March 9th, there was this bombshell that in the middle of the trial, the DOJ basically said, oh, wait, we've got a settlement.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of, there were some assumptions or there were some promises from Trump that he was going to continue the aggressive antitrust posture from Biden, maybe not as aggressively, but, it's not going to be a return to the Bush era. And the most, there's a bunch of big tech cases, but the most obvious signpost was Ticketmaster. Everybody hates Ticketmaster. They couldn't even sell Taylor Swift tickets. Like, it's called Ticketmaster and they couldn't sell tickets. That's a big problem. It's one thing to rip you off. It's another thing to just not be able to sell tickets and your name is Master of Tickets, right? It's just whatever. The
Master of Tickets.
The Master of Tickets, right?
Yes.
And so you'd think this would be a particularly embarrassing one to drop because everybody heard about it, right? And I think who's the press secretary? What's her face?
Caroline Leavitt.
Yeah, Caroline made a big deal of it, and it was just like, we're walking tall, going to kick ass. The Gail Slater, who was the head of the antitrust division under Trump, the first one, she was all walking tall about it too. And then she gets fired, and at this point, it's kind of like just nobody cares, nothing matters, and so they drop. And I think it's kind of a signal to all of corporate America that the federal government just is just all corporate crime is legal, right? Is kind of the signel, right? It's the corporate purge.
But if Live Nation thought that was the end of it, they were actually wrong, because a bipartisan coalition of state attorneys general have decided to continue the case. And we have a couple guests that can speak to this. One who, Matt, you've hired to be at the trial every day.
Yeah. So we have Gigi Liman, she's writing for it at Big Tech on Trial, which is a website we set up to track the big tech cases, and then we're too lazy to change the name. But so now,
now they're big tech too. Now they use technology.
Yeah, they use technology, right?
You have to use the web to get a ticket.
Though it's coming out, it's apparently from the 80s. It's so bad they haven't updated their system. So it's, but yeah, she's in the courtroom every day, and she's writing about what's happening. And it was a wild week. Because it is actually kind of fun, because the trial is picking up on Monday with state attorney generals. So this is not over, and Live Nation Ticketmaster, I think looks like they're in a lot of trouble, even though they thought they had a sweetheart deal. But the other person that we have to tell you about the culture of Live Nation, this guy named Tommy Dorfman, who is a promoter, and like a guy who was promoting electronic dance music for 15 years in the 90s and 2000s until Live Nation wiped him out. And he has been in litigation with Live Nation for 16 years that he has financed by selling things door to door. This guy is, he is persistent. But important information has come out about Live Nation in his litigation, and he can give you a sense of how they operate. So we're really excited to have these two to talk about what is a pretty important antitrust case that is going to be continuing.
Here we go. It's organized money.
Organized money.
You know, Tommy's been fighting with Live Nation Ticketmaster for 16 years. He's got his own view of what's going on, and I don't necessarily want to endorse it because I don't want to get sued by Live Nation Ticketmaster. But, you know, he's got a lot of evidence to back up what he's saying. So, you know, I don't know.
Take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, take it for what it's worth.
Organized money.
All right, Gigi and Tommy, thank you so much for coming on Organized Money.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. So I want to start with you, Gigi, and I want you to get us up to speed on this case. And I think we have to go back and talk first about the original lawsuit by the Justice Department and 40 states. So what can you tell us about that lawsuit as it was kicking off?
Yeah, so the original lawsuit was predicated on a couple key markets, alleging that Live Nation and Ticketmaster had a monopoly. And the specific claims were that Live Nation had a monopoly over the amphitheater market, which is a particular kind of venue that the DOJ and this consortium of states were saying is particular, these outside venues with lawns and people get to kind of walk all over. And then they were also saying that they had a monopoly over certain aspects of major concert venues, which are just venues that are 8,000 person plus, but host 10 or more concerts a year. And so what the DOJ and the states were alleging was that basically Live Nation has a major promotion business, and that they would essentially force venues into choosing Ticketmaster as the primary ticketing service in order to get the Live Nation artists who are represented by Live Nation to perform at these venues. And that Ticketmaster, through having these exclusive contracts, were basically locking these venues into only choosing Live Nation and Ticketmaster.
Right. And I think a lot of I remember when reading the complaint that a lot of it talked about this thing called the flywheel effect. And maybe you could explain kind of what they mean by that. My understanding is it's because they have kind of vertical integration across live events that they can use one to bolster another, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. So if we just talk about amphitheaters for a moment, Live Nation owns or exclusively books. I think it's around 70% of amphitheaters in the United States. And so the idea of the flywheel is that if Live Nation owns or exclusively books this amphitheater, you're an artist and you want to perform at an amphitheater. Well, Live Nation says, allegedly, that you can only perform at this amphitheater if you agree to have us promote your tour. So the singer says, okay, that's fine. I'll let you promote my tour. Well, then Live Nation is the promoter of this artist and any other artist who wants to perform at an amphitheater. And Live Nation ensures that any ticketing service that wants to sign a contract with not only this amphitheater, but any other place that this artist is going on their tour, that the ticketing service must also be Ticketmaster. And so by having control over the artist, the venue, the ticketing service, they're able to increase their power and control over all of them in this flywheel kind of effect.
Got it. I heard Tommy snicker at the term allegedly. We're going to be using that throughout this conversation. I'm just letting you know now.
Allegedly, but everybody knows they did it. Allegedly.
There you go. Yeah. So when you hear the word allegedly, just think about what Tommy just said. Allegedly, but everyone knows it. Okay. So now this actually went to trial. There was some question, was there going to be a settlement? Was the Justice Department going to bug out? But it did go to trial. And there was a week of testimony, and you were in the courtroom, Gigi, for that week of testimony. And so what were the highlights of that testimony in the first week? And then Tommy, I'll bring you in.
So the first week was kind of a mixed bag. The DOJ had some strong arguments and some strong witnesses. I would say perhaps their strongest testimony was around this Barclays deal. Basically,
Barclays, the arena in Brooklyn, right?
Correct. So there's this big arena in Brooklyn, for those who don't know, called the Barclays Center. It hosts sports, but also a ton of performances. And the DOJ brought in this guy named John Avenatti, who previously was the CEO of BSE that ran Barclays. And he told this story of when he came into Barclays, he wanted to get a new ticketing deal. And he had some conversations with Live Nation, or with Ticketmaster, and with SeatGeek, and ultimately decided to go with SeatGeek. And then he got into this conversation with the leadership at Live Nation, where they kind of cursed him out. And while he was in this deal with Ticketmaster, he gives a couple examples of when Live Nation promoted artists were just skipped over the Barclays venue. And so
were they previously scheduled to perform at Barclays, and then they just dropped that performance, or how'd they go?
So the main example he gave was a Billie Eilish concert. And Billie Eilish was scheduled to play at Barclays in 2020, and her whole tour was canceled because of the pandemic. He said it's really standard when artists reschedule their tours for them to play at the same places. But when her tour was rescheduled in 2022, she played at all the same places. The New York City locations were Radio City Music Hall and maybe Madison Square Garden or something. And then the other one was supposed to be Barclays. And Barclays was not on the tour that time around.
So, and that's because Barclays had changed its ticket. The allegation is, allegedly, they had changed their ticketing service to SeatGeek.
Right. And so he says, Live Nation says, well, you're changing your ticketing service. We're not going to give you our artists. Right. Another venue was so scared of that. This was an arena in Minnesota. And this guy who runs the arena said, he was so afraid of that happening that he agreed to re-sign his Ticketmaster deal, though he, SeatGeek had some good offers. But, a vertically integrated company isn't necessarily illegal. And we heard from another venue owner who kind of took advantage of the system. His venue was suffering, and he was the one that went to Live Nation and Ticketmaster at the same time and said, if I sign with Ticketmaster, can I also sign with Live Nation? He's now reaped the benefits of it. So
you can work the system, but if you want to fight the system, forget it.
Right. That was the moral of the
Tommy,
story.
Yeah. Okay. So Tommy, I want to bring you in. You're listening to this. You I'm sure listened to some of the trial or read some of the reports about it in this first week and about these threats and this retaliation if promoters or venues try to move away from Live Nation. We're going to get to your whole story in a second, but is that part consistent with your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Just hearing the DOJ complaint, it's actually really light compared to what Live Nation actually does, because they actually control everything. We're talking about amphitheaters here. Yeah, they control them. But if they have a venue and they're not exclusive in there and they want a show there or they want their ticketing in there, if that venue says no or that artist says no, no show for you. They
Right.
control everything. It's like the way I look at it is like in at least I'm from New York, New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey, but New York, there's 5 families
I
of the
couldn't
mafia.
tell at all. I couldn't tell that
Let's
you were from New
go.
Jersey at all.
You were just in New York, Gigi. We got 5 families in the mafia. At least the 5 families compete, and you can. There's competition. There is no competition because there's one company that controls everything.
So you're
That's
saying
how I
Live
see it.
Nation worse than the mafia. That's your view of it.
Yeah, the mafia, at least like they're technically illegal. I allege Live Nation is more illegal, but yeah, they're way worse than the mafia. You can't look at it if there's a store, like look at it like a monopoly. Like if there's a store and there's only one supermarket, you know what I mean? But let's just say there's
Right.
several supermarkets in New York City. If the mob's controlling every single one of them, you're forced to buy their salmonella chicken. You have to eat that chicken. It might suck, but you know what? You like food. You want to eat. You want to go to concerts? Guess what? You got to
Yeah.
buy it from Live Nation. You got to buy it from Ticketmaster. So there's just
Live
one
Nation
company.
now. So now we have worse than mafia and worse than salmonella. So other than that, they're a good company.
They are
okay.
salmonella, yeah.
So Gigi, this settlement between the DOJ and Live Nation, briefly, what's in it?
Yeah, so there's several key terms or requirements, and they all are behavioral. And so what that means is that there are certain things that Live Nation has to do. They still have control over Ticketmaster, but they just have to adjust the way that they're running their business to stay in line with certain requirements. So they have to give up control of 13 amphitheaters across the United States that they currently have control over. They have to Ticketmaster has to limit their fees at 15%. If a venue chooses to, 50% of the secondary tickets, which are tickets we usually see through StubHub and SeatGeek, those can go through other companies, not just Ticketmaster, if a venue chooses. And then they also have to, the document states that they are to pay $280 million in damages fees to states. But that was written with the intention of all of these states joining the agreement. As you know, we only have a few, and so it's currently unknown how many states and which states will get paid and what they will get paid. But in essence, the document is meant to stop Live Nation from engaging in anti-competitive behavior, but you'll notice that that is exactly what the consent decree sort of proclaimed when it was signed in 2010, which allowed these companies to merge together. So it's unknown whether these terms will work, what effect they'll have.
Right.
I think the consent decree has been updated several times because it hasn't delivered competition in the market. So I would think that this to me, it's just a consent decree with Ticketmaster is never going to work.
Right. And 280 million is about 4 days of profit, my understanding.
And their stock went up by 7 or 8% the day that the news came out. So let's not.
If you don't mind if I comment on this,
Please.
that's we've trusted them for the United States government for 16 years. Have done consent decree violation. They violated the merger with me within like 2 months. The consent decree. Then
Right.
they've done it again. They've done it again. Now we're saying the U.S. government is now saying Live Nation, Michael, we now trust you to not wipe out your competition. What changed overnight? They go to church, become born again? What changed? It's a joke. It's laughable. And 200-something million, like you said, David, 4 days worth of profits. Fans have been
it's
ripped
4 days
off.
worth of revenue. I should have said that before.
4 days worth of revenue. Besides their illegal kickbacks, I allege. What about 16 years of all the fans that have been ripped off? What is that going to equivalent to? Like a quarter of a penny? We don't even give pennies out anymore to each fan. A penny a fan? And it's only for these states? It's a joke. This is like, if there's ever an injustice, I think it's pretty much common sense. And that's why I think these state attorney generals are continuing this case, because fans are pissed. And fans, and why is it bipartisan? Fans go to NASCAR. Fans live in trailers. Fans are elitist. Fans, it doesn't matter what they are. They vote. And, this is their citizens that vote. And that's why this is bipartisan.
Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so that more people can get exposed to organized money. Really appreciate it. Gigi, why don't you walk us through what happened on Monday?
So Monday was there was an unexpected turn of events, at least from our position after finishing the first week. Basically, the late on Sunday, the judge got an email that the DOJ and Live Nation had reached an agreement and that they were settling. So on Monday, the counsel came in, they announced that they had reached an agreement, that they were settling, and the judge was basically furious. He found out about this settlement the night before. He only got eyes on it Monday morning. And what was even more bizarre was that the trial counsel also appeared to effectively have no idea that this settlement took place. So the lead counsel for the DOJ did not know this. The judge was questioning him, why didn't you tell me this happened? And he basically said, I had no idea that it happened.
Wait. So sorry. So let me see if I can understand what you just said. So Live Nation and the DOJ, basically, they're like, all right, trial is done. We're cool. We have
trial's
we
over.
Deal, right? Except that the lead guy for the government didn't even know about the deal, and neither did the judge. Is that
That's right?
So who did know about the deal, right?
So, it seems as though some of the counsel for Live Nation knew about the deal.
Okay, all right. Good for them.
The way that they phrased it was, we heard that there was a deal, but that some of the details were still being worked out.
Wait. Sorry. Let me be more clear. Who did they cut the deal with if it wasn't the main guy for the DOJ?
Okay.
Right. So clearly it was the government. So someone in the government, the main
Right.
guy in the government didn't know about the deal. So who in the government did know about the deal?
So the deal was signed by the CEO of Live Nation, Michael Rapino, and by the assistant U.S. attorney.
Right, the
Omid
U.S.
Sefi.
Attorney General for Omid Sefi.
Yes.
Okay, so he's the
who's not the
political guy.
line attorney, right? He's the guy who replaced Gail Slater.
So what you're saying is the guy who's doing the trial stuff didn't know about it, but the political people, the Trump people, he signed the deal with the Trump people, essentially.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
And the judge
Got it.
said to Sefi, when he finally came in the following day, I told you to be here last week. It turns out the judge had wanted him there last week, the week prior, which obviously would have resolved a lot of the issues, namely the fact that the judge had no idea that the settlement took place. But Sefi did not show up that week, so we saw him come in on Tuesday when the judge grilled him about it.
Got it. So there are 40 states as well that are involved in this case. Did they know about the settlement?
They did not know about the settlement. They received an email late on, I think it must have been the Saturday.
I think it was Wednesday.
Was it?
I think my memory is, and Matt, maybe you know different. My memory is that they got an email Wednesday that said, you have 24 hours. We reached a settlement. Here it is. You got 24 hours to decide if you want to come in on it or not.
Right. So
They
got some more information a little bit before then.
But it's not like a completed thing. It's like a term sheet, right? It's just it's kind of like an outline,
right.
right?
So,
Not like a full. Yeah. Okay.
So at some point prior to the judge hearing about the settlement, the state AGs were notified that there was a deal being talked about, and that there were certain terms, and that if they wanted to jump on and attach their states to this deal, they had 24 hours to do so. So by the
Seems
time
reasonable.
Monday rolled around,
It's a whole day. Seems very reasonable.
So let me see if I can give this some sort of a narrative hook here, because what you're saying, like none of this this is like the actual sort of TikTok of what happened, but the broad architecture of what's going on is clearly there was a deal between the Trump people and Live Nation, and they were trying to screw everyone and just roll it through by spring.
I think you hit mute, Matt.
They were trying to roll everyone by springing it on the judge, springing it on the states, and even springing it on their own team with a kind of half-ass sort of document that had a bunch of stuff in it, which we'll get to. But it was just kind of like, let's get this done and let's try to roll everyone so we can shut the case down, which is kind of how corruption. Well, this is like very weird. It never happens like this in antitrust cases or most complex civil litigation. So what you're describing,
but over the last year, it kind of has happened that way. In that there are a group of lobbyists, guys named Mike Davis, and in this case, Kellyanne Conway is a lobbyist for Live Nation. And they have the ability, because of their relationships, to go over the head of, certainly the line attorneys, but even the antitrust division, go right to Pam Bondi's office, who's the attorney general, and say, we want our client to get off. We want our client to get a sweetheart deal. And most of the time, the government says, okay,
make my retainer great again.
Right. This is $1 million backroom deals that are going on here.
I mean, the rumor with Davis is that he's going around town and just sitting down with corporations saying, you want me to get your merger through? It's going to cost you $1 million.
Right.
Which
sounds very mafia-like, to quote Tommy. But I want to get, the states were given this ultimatum 24 hours. And my understanding is not all of them succumb to that. So, and Gigi, we're taping now, it's March 13th. There was actually a hearing today. And so what is going on now with the states who said, nah, I'm not actually going to settle this case?
So the states announced or declared today there's a bipartisan coalition of states that are going forward, and they are going to resume this case on Monday in the exact same place that the trial left off a week ago, which happened to be in the middle of a direct testimony with a witness.
And this is a jury trial, right?
That's correct. So these jurors,
so the jury's going to come back, and there's going to be, the jury's going to come back, and there's going to be a different person talking to the person who's being cross-examined.
That's right. So this group of states, along with a powerful attorney they just hired, are going to continue the case. And it's worth noting that what you just talked about, Matt, of the DOJ and Live Nation kind of trying to do this all quickly and screw everyone, it almost worked because the states, when the settlement was announced between the DOJ and Live Nation, the states that were also part of the lawsuit told the judge, we don't have the resources to continue this trial on Monday. We need more time to transfer all the materials, to get outside counsel, etc., which the judge responded to by saying that's not possible, essentially. Or he
was mad. I mean, you've written it up. He was mad. He's like, you guys have known that there might be, essentially, you knew these guys are scumbags. Why weren't you ready for it? He didn't say that explicitly, but he was like, that there's been, discussions, right? Which
and
is
also,
judges have to be passive aggressive.
My view of judges is they care much more about the schedule than justice. So, it's like, you can't wait a month. You can't wait 2 months. I got stuff to do. I got to be at the golf course. So we got to go Monday.
I will say this. I like this judge. He is, look, the DOJ sort of screwed up. They're litigating. Shockingly, these guys are not the best litigators. Like when they're under the Trump administration, they don't, they're not super strategic about tactics. This judge, when I read his stuff, he's basically like saying, Okay, the government, this argument was not quite right, and they contradict themselves here and there. But you know what? If you did it properly, it's fucking Ticketmaster. We're going to trial, right? Which is like kind of that's kind of how like there's lots of ways to read between the lines, but
right. He did kind of narrow the case.
I mean, he also was just sort of. They asked for a mistrial. They did a number of things, and he's like, "No, we're going to continue this trial on Monday," and that I think was the right decision. Right. And they hired.
I mean, one thing.
Jay Lassiter is the guy they hired. Is that right?
His name's Jeffrey Kessler.
Jeffrey Kessler. Sorry, different.
But one thing I'll say, and then you can get into that.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is interesting is in between Monday, when the states want 60 days and the judge says no, and Friday when the states say, okay, we'll go Monday, there was this release of information that was redacted, that was put into the public through media reports. And it shows executives from Live Nation saying, oh, this is so great. We get to screw people over. We're just gonna price gouge these people till it hurts. And I think the light bulb went on the states. Like, I think this case might litigate itself. I'm not sure you need a whole lot of preparation to prove that Live Nation is, engaged in these alleged practices.
Well, so Tommy, I mean, I think so. Some of the stuff that came out, I mean, this was, that the judge said. Also, there was, the Live Nation filed a motion to exclude the documents that had text messages of people saying, yeah, we're going to screw them. That's how we roll, stuff like that. And right. And the Live Nation was like, oh, that was just hearsay or whatever. And the judge is like, no, that's going in the trial.
That's
that,
coming out.
Is that kind of rhetoric? You saw that, Tommy. Is that kind of familiar to you when you dealt with these guys?
Yeah, this is the stuff you actually just heard that was out there. That's actually them being nice. The information I've seen is way worse. This is the common corporate practice by Live Nation, and it's run and controlled by the head of their company knowing about it. So this is corporately run by the leader of Live Nation, by the godfather of their alleged crime family. And just to circle the one thing back to you guys were talking about the court. Being a fan here and coming from the being an independent promoter, I thought it was just a slap in the face to every U.S. citizen, to every fan. There's fans from all different parties. Why did you take this case from, if this is bipartisan, like you said, why did you take this from the Biden administration to the Trump administration? Make jurors have to take off work? These people are working class people like the fans that get ripped off every day by Live Nation. And then
they're
just
getting ripped off more.
You know what? It just doesn't pass the sniff test. I think any person with common sense can tell this.
Well, let me can I just read? I want to read it exactly what they said. Okay. Cause it's like, it's kind of great. So one of the Ticketmaster execs, they're chatting privately. One of them says, robbing them blind, baby, end quote. And the other one says, that's how we do it. And there's a lot of that, like that kind of thing.
They're criminals, but they're dorks. They're
Actually, there was this other part. You say that there was this other part of that nobody picked up on because it doesn't matter. Where one of them was like, this oil company sent me a Facebook ad on electric vehicles. This is in like 2022 at the height of the liberal thing, and they started making fun of oil lobbyists because they apparently love electric vehicles and want to believe in climate change and all the rest of it, which I thought was pretty funny.
That's funny. All right. Well, at this point, I think we need to let Tommy tell his story. So, because you have an actual.
Wait, did we finish?
Case.
Did we get through the week and just sort of, because I interrupted, but did we get through the week?
We can go back and pick up Kessler.
Okay.
I think we'll just go back and pick it up. Oh, go ahead, Gigi.
Well, this is not this is being edited, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing is that I was thinking when you guys were laying the land with the current state of the DOJ is maybe a little Gail Slater.
Sure.
That's relevant to this.
Yeah. Tell us. So give us the background on.
You all know more about.
So Sefi, you mentioned this guy Omid Sefi, and it turns out he's not who was in charge of the DOJ antitrust division as recently as 3 weeks ago. This woman, Gail Slater, was the Senate confirmed choice to run the antitrust division at the Justice Department. And for a variety of reasons, mainly up to and including her resistance to settle the Ticketmaster case, she was forced out. She was basically told resign or be fired. And she did. She resigned. And as a result, Asefi apparently went right into negotiations with Live Nation on this case. I guess he didn't get it done quite in time to stop the trial outright, but he got it about a week in.
Yeah, I mean, and let's not overstate. She was not great.
No, I mean, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah.
This is, people want to portray this as some sort of martyr thing. Maybe. I doubt it, but
yeah,
whatever.
She was incompetent. There's no question.
And she hasn't spoken out either, and she saw all this stuff. So I'm a little bit like, sorry,
I completely agree with you, man.
I mean, there's this tendency to be like, oh, the martyr, and you're just sort of like, I don't know. I mean, they're all vitamin supplement scammers.
The martyr? Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway,
so you Gigi, walk us through quickly the rest of the week. And then we're going to get to Tommy's story.
Yeah. So, after on Monday they came in, they announced settlement, and the states wanted the 60-day grace period basically to resume trial, and the judge said, "No, I'm not going to decide that, and you have to spend the week negotiating with Live Nation." And so we don't know much about what has happened in the last 5 days. The judge basically told Live Nation and this group of states that they could use any room in the courthouse, do whatever they need to do to try and get a deal to settle. And as of this morning, there's a few states that have settled with Live Nation. Iowa, Arkansas, Mississippi, South Carolina is still in negotiations, and South Dakota. Iowa's executed term sheet actually came in the middle of today's hearing. They announced it in the middle that they had now signed an agreement. And the rest of the states are now pushing forward and will be part of this group leading the trial.
So the trial restarts on Monday, and the guy who's running it is who?
There's Kessler, who's the outside attorney.
Right.
And then the attorney general for DC
Brian
and
Schwab and Tish James. Yeah. So Kessler, we did an episode on NASCAR, and Kessler was the attorney for Michael Jordan in that case. He is a well-known sort of superstar in the antitrust world. He's the guy who won the NCAA v. Alston case, which allowed for college football and basketball players to get paid, which we did a story on.
We also did an episode on.
He's kind of the man when it comes to antitrust cases, particularly in sports, but in other cases too. He's like a razzle-dazzle trial lawyer.
And there's a sports angle to this too, right? Sports ticketing is part of it, sort of.
Yeah.
Kessler seems like he has a pretty good track record, and so we'll see what happens. But I want to bring in Tommy right now because you actually have an active case also against Live Nation because of your past history as a concert promoter. So can you explain what happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing I want to say, just listening to this, it just looks like a really bad movie that somebody just did a comedy spinoff. It doesn't even seem real that this could happen in the United States when we're supposed to be the top country in the world.
Oh, it can.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree. I don't.
Right?
I don't feel. Seen this? I don't feel like this is a. I don't feel like this is a plausible story. Like I think they would just say,
send it back with
this
notes.
is not realistic.
Yeah,
it's too stupid. Yeah. You got to make it more realistic.
I would definitely send this back.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Yeah. So to answer, sorry, I had to say that, David. It's sad, but it's almost comical.
Yep.
So I've been battling Live Nation for 15 years in federal court because they came in and I allege they did. They wiped me out of right when they merged with Ticketmaster. They just had merged with Ticketmaster. They wiped me out of a 10-year exclusive deal for concerts and festivals that I was producing at the Meadowlands. Anybody from not New York or New Jersey, it's the home to the Jets and Giants, with the largest state fair. I was putting on an EDM festival. It was going to be the largest in the East Coast. Live Nation came in, found out about it, and it was interesting, Gigi. You mentioned the word 10,000 people or 8,000 people that they had these amphitheaters they needed to run. Live Nation actually told me, executives in meeting, they wiped me out. They told me in meetings that if there was an event of going on of 10,000 people, Live Nation needed to be involved. They told my business partners the exact same thing, and I have it on tape recording. So it's really interesting you actually said that.
Yeah. So they find out about your EDM festival and they want in, and you kind of resist this, I guess, and then what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. I resisted. Live Nation wasn't into electronic dance music, so I didn't even know who they were till this happened. They came into no clue. They did rock and roll. I don't do rock and roll, you know? I did business for 15 years before the super successful, okay?
Right.
They came in, they went to the owner of the State Fair Meadowlands, Al Dorso, good guy. They went to him. They told him, kick me out of my contract. Kick me out. EDM is the next big thing. It's the next thing, like when rock and roll broke, like when I guess I was super young or before I was born, and we're taking it. He's like, well, they have a contract. They don't care. We don't care. It's our stadium. And then they bashed me to the Sports Authority, which is the owner of the Meadowlands Stadium that runs it, to the powers that can be, defaming me. I'll allege, but they did it. I have it on tape. To me, I have it on emails, their internal ones, defaming me, my partners, calling us thieves, trying to get us kicked out of it. They told the owner of the State Fair Meadowlands that kick us out, because if he doesn't, they're going to block all our talent from all the talent agencies. I had the number one EDM artist in the world, Tiesto, right on board with us right at the time. And they told him they were going to block Tiesto's dates worldwide and not allow us to get any talent. Then he asked me to have a meeting with Live Nation executives, and the owner, Al Dorso, did, respectfully. He said, they're wiping you out. Go have a meeting with these guys. At a meeting with their two top executives at the Live Nation headquarters, Jason Miller and John D'Esposito. That's the president of the New York City, their largest market in the U.S., Michael Rapino says. And they came in and they told me, right, like wild animals, they said, you partner with us in the show, kick your partners out, because we need EDM. I tried to give them like a kid show, a rock and roll. I'm like, dude, rock and roll, take a rock show here, bro. I'll give it to you. You know what I mean? Or we're wiping you the hell out. We'll block all your talent from all the agencies. We'll block your tickets from Ticketmaster. I was like, how are you going to block my tickets from Ticketmaster? We bought him. I had no clue. I was like, I thought they were bullshitting until I got out and Googled and saw Live Nation bought Ticketmaster. Yeah.
I feel like if the mafia was listening to this, they'd be like, God, that's rough. That's pretty rough. I don't know, man.
Yeah, the mafia.
That's not how I would have done it.
The mafia at least does it with class. You know what I mean? They have some class. I battled the mafia.
Tony Soprano would be like, yeah, that's not how I would have gone about it.
I battled these guys 15 years in business. I fended off the mafia. I'm from New Jersey, 15 years in the club world. These guys let me do business. This is like they make, this mafia's got class. Right. Look what,
so,
Live Nation did it.
Okay, so
I will say no. So let's not move on. I do want to make it just sort of a broad point, because you do hear this commentary all the time from people, like, for example, pharmacists who get their reimbursements cut by a PBM that is owned by CVS, and then CVS sends them a letter saying, "Oh man, we know times are tough. Would you like to sell out to us?" After cutting their revenue. And what people often say, and this is true kind of across the board, is that really feels like the mafia. Or I heard this the other day from some Hollywood guy about negotiations. He's like, it's just gangster stuff what they're doing. So I do think there has been this kind of normalization of thuggish tactics across the economy. There's no violence. I mean, I don't think Live Nation they just have legal authority, so they don't need to engage in violence. And not, what they're doing is maybe it might be a civil violation, but it's not a crime. But it is
just
the
violence,
normal.
Violence
it is,
by
Yes, it's
Spreadsheet.
economic harm.
It's violence
And
by spreadsheet. Yeah.
it's the
Economic
I
normal.
would rather. I got smacked with a bat by the mob. They let me do business. I'd rather get hit with a baseball bat, and then they say, "Hey, we respect you for not paying us, and we're gonna let you do business." Live Nation, they just do it like you said in suits, gangsters in suits. That's it is. That's all it is, and
Yeah.
it became normalized, like you said. It's a mafia in suits. No difference.
Well, I
So-
don't want to get hit by a baseball bat. I'm just going to say that. I would
is true.
prefer.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say no. For
Well,
We're
me.
Matt,
like
I know you said
three
no, but
votes
if you
for
were if you were
baseball
me
bat.
and you got hit with a baseball bat and you got hit by Live Nation, like I did, you might want to get hit with a baseball bat.
Because what then happened? So
No,
you're
no,
like
thank you.
mustard. Because what then happened, Tommy? You're like mustered out of the industry, right? Like, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so Live Nation wiped me out of the whole entire industry. They got my name removed from the largest paper in New Jersey, the Star Ledger, had a #1 promoter nomination. They got it removed. I was what Michael Rapino didn't want. Live Nation, he's publicly in the press right when this was happening, saying Live Nation was behind the 8 ball with electronic dance music. And his fear
Mm.
was a lesser known organization like myself would lock up a property for EDM festivals before that. So he said, he said it in the press, when he said it to his executives, go acquire or hire these people. I'm the one that refused their money and I refused to be hired. And I'm the one that found that property and locked it up. So Live Nation want to make a lesson of me. So they blew me out of the whole entire industry and I got wiped out. I lost my whole career. Ended up going homeless and I ended up having to go door to door doing lead gen. I went from chilling with Snoop Dogg at my birthday party, Joel Santana, Paris Hilton, to in a few months going homeless and then having to get a job selling Windows lead generation for Windows door to door, then doing cable door to door, and that's what's funded this litigation for almost 16 years now.
Wow, crazy story. Yeah, so it's been a legal odyssey. So you've been trying to get this case done for 15 years, and what I found very interesting, and I know Matt's written about this too, is you hired an expert, and the expert issued a report at one point. And there are a lot of allegations in that, but the one that's interesting to me is that you say Live Nation had different sets of books. So could you explain that expert report that
were
able
I want
to
to validate something that I want to, because I've known Tommy for a while, and the expert report that came out is from one of the top academics about the music industry, and I did a story on it after it came out, but it was a congressman found it and put it out.
Bill
and
Pascrell.
Bill Pascrell has
Yeah.
passed away, but it was a
He was
very
passed away.
significant moment a couple of years ago because this expert report was hidden, and it caused a big stir. But why don't you tell us about it? So I just wanted to validate that because it's it was a big deal when it came out. But what did it say? Tell us the story.
Yeah, so to answer David's question first about the alleged 2 sets of books, it's not alleged. They have 2 sets of cookbooks, and I have their 2 sets of cookbooks. And if I didn't have the receipts for it, I wouldn't be saying it on here without saying the word alleged, Michael Rapino. They have 2 sets of cookbooks. So I will say this, I allege they run a legal rebates kickback scheme where they go to the venues. It doesn't matter if they own or not. They own everything. They go to a venue and they say, give us a certain amount of money. I'll make an analogy. We want $10 a head back for every ticket sold through Ticketmaster, which is every ticket. Kick back in our pocket. In exchange, the Live Nation has an artist performing, and they have an independent promoter promoting with them. And they're going to say in exchange, we're going to increase the cost of the security or the rent, pass it on to the artist, pass it on to the independent promoter, and we're going to take all that money, put it in our pocket, and it doesn't go to the artist, and it doesn't go to the independent promoter. It is why ticket prices are so high, and it is why independent promoters are wiped out, because there's 2 sets of books. There's one where Live Nation has projections.
Sorry. Let me just see if I can clarify something. So they raise the ticket prices by $10. They take that $10 as a fee to themselves.
They don't raise the ticket prices, and it's not a fee. this is an item that no one ever sees. The artist doesn't see, the independent promoter doesn't see.
Okay.
The venue, so a state-owned venue, has to kick to be able to put on a show. The venue doesn't want to pay them, but they make them. That's what it's like the mafia.
I see.
Going to a place.
So the venue raises its rent, and
The
then
venue-
gives part of that rent back to Ticketmaster, kind of.
more than the rent. They tell the venue, you got to pay us. So the venue is paying $10 for every person. So say there's 50,000 people in the stadium. Do $10 times the 50,000. There's your number that goes directly into Live Nation's pocket.
So what I'm trying to get at is, so they take that $500,000 from the venue, and that goes into Live Nation or Ticketmaster's pocket, but not for that performance. So the performance, when they have a profit and loss statement for that performance, it could show a loss of, say, $200,000, but that's because it doesn't include that $500,000 that was paid elsewhere. I'm trying to get to the two sets of books. So
Absolutely.
so that's what's going on here. So Live Nation will say, we lost $200,000. They'll go to the promoter, they'll go to the artist, and they'll say, there's nothing to split because we lost so much money. But then meanwhile, there's this $500,000 that's gone to themselves. And so it's the split of revenue where they're actually doing the extracting. And so they have the one set of books says we've done really well, but the set of books they show to their partners shows that they've lost. Is that what you kind of where it is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've almost 1,000 shows, information I've seen, where everything's in the negative, in the red, for the artist, the independent promoter. Almost every one. And every single one on the other side, Live Nation's making money.
By the way, this is one of Live Nation's kind of alibis. Like, hey, we're a low margin business. We don't make that much money. We can't be a monopoly because we don't make that much money. And this is one of the reasons why they feel like they can say that.
Well, they say they're not making that much money, but they buy a promoter for $250 million like every day. This is where the money comes from. It's all from
Right.
kickbacks. I allege illegal kickbacks.
Right. So, I wonder your thoughts. I want to get Gigi back in because, you hear this story and it's much wilder than what's happening in the courtroom, at least to start. I mean, some of the allegations of threats and retaliation are the same, but two sets of books and all of this stuff. It's different. Do you feel like the trial is just sort of being circumscribed in some way, where they're just trying to get at whatever little part they can absolutely prove to move on?
I mean, I think they are obviously we've only done a full week.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so a good amount is laying the groundwork. They are obviously more limited in a courtroom to say all sorts of things because there are these guardrails for good reason that limit what you can say based upon things like hearsay. So there were multiple instances in which a witness would say that, going back to the Billie Eilish thing, that someone in Billie Eilish's team told Mr. Albinati that it wasn't Billie Eilish's idea to move the concert from Barclays. It was Live Nation's idea to move the concert from Barclays. But there are these hearsay things that are excluded. There were, several things that the CEO of SeatGeek said about about venues that felt threatened by leaving Ticketmaster that weren't admitted into evidence. And so it's more tricky to grasp these elements of what Tommy was saying and include them into trial. So they're obviously having to be a little more strategic. But, I think the witnesses are trying to get at the threats and the game that Live Nation plays in the ways that they can.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers what.
Yeah. No, totally.
Okay.
Matt, you want to go? You're muted, Matt.
So, Tommy, when you saw this case, the investigation and then the trial or the complaint filed, were you hopeful that there would be some sort of justice?
Yeah, when I saw the complaint filed, I was super happy. It got filed like right after my expert report got released by Congressman Pascrell. It got filed a few weeks later. So I was very happy because I'm looking for justice for the fans, independent promoters to be able to compete again because they're all wiped out or they're at an extinction level event about a Live Nation to even put on a show. That's why you don't see many of them speaking out. So I was really hopeful. And it was bipartisan. This is one of the only, in this country, you guys deal with stuff every day. I look at it, there's nothing bipartisan. This is like the only bipartisan issue against Live Nation and Ticketmaster.
Even with bipartisan, the Ticketmaster gets off with it, gets away with it. That's
well,
bipartisan.
So far. Well, you know what? The DOJ may have let them off the hook. They may have failed their citizens and the fans, but there's in the state attorney generals might have. But now there's other state attorney generals that are still fighting it, and hopefully they'll do the right things for the fans and citizens. But yes, I was really hopeful that this could cause real change in the industry, a full breakup of Live Nation and Ticketmaster at the minimum.
Why is it taken? I mean, just in terms of your case, right? Why is it taken? You've been in court for 16 years, like that. Why is it so long? What happened?
Yeah, some people look at me like I'm crazy. There's no statute of limitations in federal cases, and I'll tell you one thing: Live Nation's really good at technicalities. They're experts at that. Experts at lobbying, running a monopoly, and technicalities. When I saw the other day, I just saw Live Nation. I think you were at the courtroom today for it, Gigi. Live Nation filed a motion because they were pissed off that it was going to prejudice their case because this new attorney, because they sandbagged the states with the case, this new attorney that you talked about, I don't know his name, picked it up, wanted to put witnesses on a different schedule. And they went in and tried to exclude all the witnesses because of that. And I'm sitting there going, you just left them with no attorney, didn't even tell a judge, and settle the case, Live Nation. It's a technicality. And that's what I dealt with from the beginning. Live Nation was ordered by a federal magistrate, Judge Mannion. I'm going to look it up on Pacer. He was ordered to turn over all these documents from all these events and festivals that Live Nation runs within 90 days. Live Nation never appealed it. Live Nation lost it. Live Nation refused to turn the documents over. We kept going back to the court, back to the court, back to the court. Finally, my lawyer was like, I was running out of money to keep going back. It's years now. Says, I understand the plaintiffs are wearing out their welcome, but they're entitled to this evidence. Till this day, we only got 5% of the discovery. And it's not even that. I'm in New York, New Jersey. This is where it happened. I was getting concerts from Pennsylvania, 500 people events. Okay? You know how many documents I got? Document drop, 20,000. Then there'd be a concert in New York or New Jersey, real relevant. And it'd be 40,000 people. You know how many documents I got? 1. So up to this day in 16 years, Live Nation's only turned over 5% of the court-ordered discovery. The relevant discovery, I only got 1%. They're great at technicalities.
Yeah.
And paying high lawyers.
We won't get into that, but it doesn't, it's, let's just say judges are not always.
It speaks to a problem with the legal system, I think. If these things can be drawn out and drawn out and drawn out.
Well, I think it speaks to the power.
At some point, you got to draw a line.
I think absolutely, and I think it draws to the power of Live Nation, and why we say they're more powerful than the mafia. Can the mafia draw a case on for 15 years? I don't think anybody can.
Right. So, Gigi, just to wrap up here, from your sense, you've seen a week of this. Now we're going to have a new group of lawyers. We're going to have a new lead attorney. Where do you think this case is going from your perspective, having been there every step of the way?
It's a good question. I think, a good part of the trial that I've witnessed thus far was dominated by some of the key larger players in this industry. CEO of SeatGeek. We are halfway through the testimony of the CEO of AEG, which is another promotion and ticketing company. Barclays, those who lead these massive venues, and they have, by and large, kind of described the system and the way that it works. And I'm hoping that in this upcoming week, we are going to start to get into the meat of what's actually taking place. Those who have been primarily affected. I think we're going to hear from some artists and some promoters and folks in that world. But I will also, on another note, just say, as it relates to what Tommy said about bipartisanship, one aspect of this trial that is unique and has been very interesting to see is that when you go into the gallery, they usually have one side where the plaintiffs' attorneys sit, those who aren't at counsel table, and the other side, the defense attorneys who aren't at the counsel table sit. And when you look or talk to those who are on the plaintiff's side, it's these attorneys general and their staff from all different states sitting together, conferring and talking, and it's quite an interesting, I guess, thing to see all these different folks from the different states, getting along in such a way.
Well, I know you'll be back in the courtroom, and I know Tommy will be watching, and we're looking forward to seeing what happens. But Gigi Liman, Tommy Dorfman, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Organized money.
This is not exactly a hopeful moment. And, we don't even have to get into Iran or anything like that. But one thing that is interesting is that the stock, Live Nation stock, did pop pretty high when the settlement was announced, but it is now below where it was before the settlement. So Wall Street has looked at the situation and said, you know what? Maybe things are maybe they're not off scot-free like we thought they'd be.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the fact the states decided to stay in the case. They didn't knuckle under, even though they were really piggybacking off the Justice Department, which had 40 attorneys dedicated to the case. And the state said, you know what, we're gonna give this a shot, and we're gonna hire a really well-regarded antitrust attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, to pursue the case. And we think we have a good story to tell. And the judge, and it's a jury trial, so they're the kinds of things that sometimes you see with judges and their reluctance to break up companies, or their reluctance to find a corporation liable for anything, might not be there with a jury. A jury might look at the facts and say, yeah, looks like Live Nation is a monopolist. So And this isn't the only trial, right, Matt, that the states are likely to have to pick up the slack for the federal government that has just walked off the field.
Yeah. So there are other cases the government hasn't walked away from. Like, we don't need to over exaggerate on merger law. They've kind of abandoned it. But there are monopolization cases against Amazon, against Apple, still against Google. Who else? I think John Deere, Syngenta.
Is the Visa case still going?
Oh yeah, the Visa case. So and they all have, I think all of them have some state attorneys general who are co-plaintiffs. So what that means is that if the federal government does drop off the case, the state AGs could pick it up and run with it if they want to. Now, I do want to offer a cautionary note, because the states just don't have the resources or the bureaucracies to handle it all. They just can't. they're going to have to, if the DOJ does drop all these cases or FTC drop these cases, they will drop some of the cases or they will settle some of the cases. And when they go to trial, it is very likely that they will not do a particularly good job at this trial. Like, I don't want to disappoint anyone. When you lose 40 lawyers who've been, working on this for months, and you don't have the information or the expert testimony, and you have to kind of cobble it all together in a week, even though every lawyer doing a witness, who's going at a witness has an understudy that's a state understudy, they are not ready the same way that the DOJ attorneys were. They're not experienced the same way. So it could be ugly, or it could go really well. I mean, Jim Kessler is a very, very good antitrust attorney. But what is important here, there's a number of aspects that are important here. And one of them is the states are building capacity just by having lawyers in these trials.
Right.
They are going to get experience, right? So,
and it's not just that they're building capacity, they're building will. Like, they're willing to try here because it's Ticketmaster, maybe because of the political valence around it,
right.
maybe because they think this case is important enough, or that the evidence is strong enough that they feel like even without the perfect amount of expertise, they can move forward with it. And that's important. That will is important because there are other cases coming down the pike. We have talked on this podcast about the Paramount Warner Brothers merger, and how the states are probably going to have to make a decision there. There's another case between an attempted merger between Tania and Nexstar, which are two conglomerates of local television stations. That is actually coming up very quickly, and they might need to make a decision there as well.
Those are the people that got Jimmy Kimmel kicked off the air temporarily. Right. So they have a lot of power, even though they're not, well-known brands.
Exactly.
They own your local affiliate.
So, I mean, exercising this muscle and getting the states to think in these terms, I think there's an importance there. And if obviously the big states, the heavy lifters here are California and New York, and if the political class in those states wants to, stop the guys who got Jimmy Kimmel kicked off the air, or stop Trump from buying, Trump from getting an ally at CNN, then they can actually fund these state justice departments with the proper resources on a per case basis, like they did in Texas to fund the Google case that Ken Paxton brought against Google. So there are opportunities here to expand their resources if they have to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing, just to speak kind of in a broader sense, I think the main problem that Democrats have had, and I think this is true on the right as well, but I'm going to speak to Democrats because I'm a self-loathing Democrat.
Yeah.
I think the main issue is an unwillingness to govern, right? They just did not want to govern, especially corporate power. And, when you're out of federal control on a legislative and executive branch basis, it's really the time that you practice what you're going to do when you gain power back. And, in the first Trump term, it was a lot of, hashtag resistance type of stuff. And so when they did get back into power, they kind of didn't, I think, really know exactly what they were going to do. And they just sort of cobbled together industrial policy and a couple of other things, but without a totally, some diversity initiatives. It wasn't a particularly coherent framework. And it's because it was based on what they had been practicing. And I think these types of attempts to govern corporate power, the people that are doing it, those are the people who are going to be governing after the midterms and after the next presidential race. And they're going to have a very different view of what needs to happen. I'm not necessarily optimistic. I'm not optimistic, but it's
a first step.
It's different. It's different than what we saw in terms of resistance in the first Trump term. I mean, first of all, everybody hates Ticketmaster. It's not a polarizing thing. It's like everybody hates Ticketmaster. I know a lot of people on the right are deeply ashamed of what Trump did here. Kid Rock has been notably silent, for example. But yeah, so I guess that's that's the other point here as the world descends into hellfire.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, for
Yeah.
picking us up here at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Well, next week we're going to have another episode of Organized Money, and we hope you can join us.